You know what drives me crazy? Seeing YouTubers quote guidebooks, especially Daizenshuu 7, as if they're some kind of gospel. Don't get me wrong, I understand why people use them. They're official products connected to Dragon Ball, but I think many fans give them far more authority than they deserve. Those guidebooks were not written by Akira Toriyama. He may have looked at them, and he may have approved some of the information in them, but let's be real. I don't think he obsessed over every detail the way fans do today. Toriyama was a storyteller, not a historian documenting every aspect of his fictional universe. The problem is that some fans treat guidebooks, interviews, and magazine articles as if they carry the same weight as the manga itself. In my opinion, they don't. For example, take the Super Saiyan multiplier. For years, I heard people repeat that Super Saiyan multiplies a character's power by 50 times. That idea has become so widespread that many fans treat it as an unquestionable fact. But I don't. And honestly, I don't really care if that information comes from a guidebook. The reason is simple. I care more about what was actually established in the manga than what was written in supplementary material years later. Let's be real for a second. Akira Toriyama didn't seem to care about numerical calculations the way fans do. He wasn't sitting there with a calculator trying to make sure every transformation followed a precise mathematical formula. The power levels in Dragon Ball had a purpose. Their purpose was to communicate how powerful a character was at a given moment in the story. When readers saw that Goku's power level had increased, the point wasn't for them to calculate exact multipliers decades later. The point was to create excitement. Readers would think, wow, Goku just reached 12,000. The number itself wasn't the important part. The important part was understanding that Goku had become significantly stronger. Another example of this problem involves the origins of the Supreme Kais. I've seen people claim that Toriyama retconned the Supreme Kais because later material supposedly contradicted information that appeared in guidebooks, interviews, or magazine articles. But how can something be a retcon if it was never established in the story to begin with? That's the question I always ask. As far as I remember, the information people cite came from supplementary material. Maybe it was a guidebook, maybe it was an interview, maybe it was a magazine article. Honestly, I don't remember the exact source. What I do know is that those details were never clearly established in the original manga. So how can Toriyama be accused of contradicting the story when the story itself never introduced those ideas? Toriyama probably had concepts and outlines in his head. He may have shared some of those ideas in interviews over the years. But an outline is not the same thing as established canon within the story itself. If an idea was never officially presented in the manga, then Toriyama had every right to change his mind later. In my view, a retcon only occurs when an established fact within the story is later contradicted. If something was never established in the narrative to begin with, then changing it is not really a retcon. This is one of my biggest problems with how some fans approach Dragon Ball. They treat information from guidebooks, interviews, and magazine articles as if it carries the same authority as the manga itself. Then, YouTubers repeat that information in their videos because it sounds official and gives their arguments more credibility. But sometimes all they're doing is spreading ideas that were never actually established by the story. And it's not just guidebooks. There are plenty of claims about Dragon Ball floating around the internet that simply aren't true. A perfect example is the idea that Dragon Ball was originally supposed to end with the Frieza Saga. People repeat that claim constantly, yet there is very little evidence to support it, and over time, it has become one of those pieces of Dragon Ball knowledge that fans accept without questioning. Another thing people forget is that most modern fans are not experiencing Dragon Ball the way readers originally experienced it. Many Dragon Ball fans weren't even alive when the manga was being published. They didn't read the story week by week as it was released. Yet some people speak with absolute certainty about what readers supposedly thought at the time, while relying heavily on guidebooks, interviews, secondhand information, and decades of fan discussions. My point is simple. If we're going to discuss Dragon Ball, the manga should come first. Guidebooks can be interesting. Interviews can be interesting. Magazine articles can be interesting. But none of those sources should be treated as more important than the story Akira Toriyama actually wrote. At the end of the day, Dragon Ball